From the PEP Radio Newsroom, this is the Hourly News Blast. The Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a cornerstone of American culture for 3 generations, announced Friday it would take steps toward its own closure after being defunded by Congress, marking the end of a nearly 6-decade era in which it fueled the production of renowned educational programming, cultural content, and even emergency alerts. The demise of the corporation, known as CPB, is a direct result of President Donald Trump's targeting of public media, which he has repeatedly said is spreading political and cultural views antithetical to those the United States should be espousing. The closure is expected to have a profound impact on the journalistic and cultural landscape, in particular public radio and TV stations in small communities across the United States. CPB also helps fund both PBS and NPR, but most of its funding is distributed to more than 1,500 local public radio and television stations around the country. The corporation also has deep ties, much of the nation's most familiar programming, from NPR's All Things Considered to historically Sesame Street, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and the documentaries of Ken Burns. The corporation set its end 58 years after being signed into law by President Lyndon B. Johnson, would come in an orderly wind down. In a statement, it said the decision came after the passage through Congress of a package that clawed back its funding for the next 2 budget years, about $1.1 billion. Then the Senate Appropriations Committee reinforced that policy change Thursday by excluding funding for the corporation for the first time in more than 50 years as part of a broader spending bill. Despite the extraordinary efforts of millions of Americans who called, wrote, and petitioned Congress to preserve federal funding for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, we now face the difficult reality of closing our operations, said Patricia Harrison, the corporation's president and CEO. Democratic members of the Senate Appropriations Committee made a last-ditch effort this week to save the corporation's funding. As part of Thursday's committee deliberation, Senator Tammy Baldwin, the Democrat from Wisconsin, authored but then withdrew an amendment to restore CPB funding for the coming budget year. She said she still believed there was a path forward to fix this before there are devastating consequences for public radio and television stations across the country. It's hard to believe we've ended up in the situation we're in, she said, and I'm going to continue to work with my colleagues to fix it. But Senator Shelley Moore Capito, the Republican from West Virginia, sounded a less optimistic tone. I understand your concerns, but we all know we litigated this 2 weeks ago, Capito said. Adopting this amendment would have been contrary to what we've already voted on. The Corporation for Public Broadcasting said it informed employees Friday that most staff positions will end with the fiscal year on September 30th. It said a small transition team will stay in place until January to finish any remaining work, including, it said, ensuring continuity for music rights and royalties that remain essential to the public media system. Public media has been one of the most trusted institutions in American life, providing educational opportunity, emergency alerts, civil discourse, and cultural connection to every corner of the country, Harrison said. We are deeply grateful to our partners across the system for their resilience, leadership, and unwavering dedication to serving the American people. NPR stations use millions of dollars in federal money to pay music licensing fees. Now many will have to renegotiate these deals. That could impact, in particular, outlets that build their programming around music discovery. NPR President and CEO Catherine Maher estimated recently, for example, that some 96% of all classic music broadcast in the United States is on public radio stations. Federal money for public radio and television has traditionally been appropriated to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which it then distributes to NPR and PBS. Roughly 70% of that money goes directly to the 330 PBS and 246 NPR stations across the country, although that's only a shorthand way to describe its potential impact. Trump, who has called the Corporation for Public Broadcasting a monstrosity, has long said the public broadcasting displays an extreme liberal bias, helped create the momentum in recent months for an anti-public broadcasting groundswell among his supporters in Congress and around the country. It is part of a larger initiative in which he has targeted institutions, particularly cultural ones, that produce content or espouse attitudes that he considers un-American, or as Hitler would have considered un-German. You see the similarities here? The Corporation for Public Broadcasting's demise represents a political victory for these efforts. His impact on the media landscape has been profound. He has also gone after U.S. government media that had independence charters, including the venerable Voice of America, ending that media outlet's operations after many decades. And now for some commentary. The real monstrosity is Donald J. Trump. He has trashed the White House Rose Garden, saddled up next to Benjamin Netanyahu to commit genocide in Gaza, slammed our allies with tariffs, brought significant harm to the people of Ukraine by clumsily blustering his way through negotiations, harmed trans youth across the country by de facto stopping gender-affirming health care, attacked universities across the country that are conducting important cancer and HIV research, fumbled and bumbled access to the Jeffrey Epstein files, slashed FEMA's budget while denying funds to flood, tornado, and hurricane victims, appointed incompetent morons to lead various executive branch agencies, gutted the Department of Education, established a concentration camp in the Everglades, deported hundreds of immigrants without providing them due process rights, and this is only a partial list. If you can still support Trump after all he has done to harm the United States and the world, you are part of the problem. Remember, he's also coming after Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, SNAP benefits, and the entire cast of Sesame Street. Hope your vote was worth it, because you screwed the country. That's the News Blast for this hour. Up next, we have the Meadville area weather forecast here on PEP Radio.